want to move forward. So the next section we're looking at is those potentials that God gave us as gifts. So we'll look at the potentials. What are those? So Shula up the back there.
Potential to grow.
Yeah, so even just the potential to grow beyond and here I'm talking about grow beyond our originally created condition. Right, so the soul has the potential to grow. It's like, an animal's body has the potential to grow, but not beyond its originally created condition, not beyond what its genetics determine. But the soul has the ability to grow beyond its current genetics if it receives external forces or influences, which are God's love in particular. It has the ability to grow beyond that. So you could say to grow, and in particular we weren't talking about beyond normal, shall we call it, into the divine. Amazing potential. It's amazing to create a being that, on one hand, without divine influence, it has a certain potential, and then on the other, when it receives some of this divine influence, it has a completely different potential, an unlimited potential, isn't it? What an incredible idea. Just an incredible idea. It's like you creating a car, imagining at some point in the future it's going to morph into a self-levitating aircraft. Do you know what I mean? As long as it has certain things supplied to it. Amazing, eh? So as a concept, yeah. It's like a transformer. Yeah. Okay, so Barb, if we have Barb, yeah, down to.
So the opposite to that, to decline. We have potentials to decline.
Yeah, to degrade, shall we call it? To degrade. It's a potential as well. God created us with that potential. And these potentials are all based upon use of will. So isn't that wonderful? Like, I can choose to do a certain thing, and a certain thing's going to happen as a result of my choice. I can choose to do a different thing, and another thing will happen because of that choice, and so forth. It's a wonderful thing to. So it's like creating a car that eventually turns into a self-levitating aeroplane, that eventually has its own mind and decides where to go and where it wants to be, and eventually it procreates, and it has how far do we go? Imagine designing this little thing and all of a sudden it turns out to be this amazing thing, and who knows what. And to be honest, there's no spirit yet in the universe who's ever discovered the full potential. And in fact, theoretically, it's highly likely that will never happen. That will never discover the full potential, because each new potential opens up pathways for more potential. Yeah. Sam, if we...
The potential to develop a relationship with God.
Which is very interesting, isn't it? So it's like us creating a car, working out that later on it's going to have a relationship with us of some kind, but it's going to be its own free-thinking, free-feeling being. That it's an amazing concept if you think about it. And what's amazing about it too is to have a relationship with the actual creator. It's one thing to create a being that has a relationship with other beings. Quite another to create a relationship that has the potential for communication and the sharing of information with the actual person or being that created it. It's quite an incredible creation, isn't it?
Do you think that it's logical to then assume that at some point God was actually developing in love towards being a divine being and working and developing a relationship towards another God even?
Yeah, it's possible. I don't see, I always feel there's going to be one God, but the reality is that it's very possible that we eventually may have souls as children. And then those children develop a relationship with us in the same way that we've developed a relationship with God.
Amazing. Thanks.
Who knows, like we don't know, do we? It's very hard to predict when you've got an infinite future, what the infinite future is going to look like when you're in the process of progressing in a very rudimentary way. Right. Okay, if we come down to Cecily and then back to Joy.
The potential to create.
Yes, well, that's a part of it all, isn't it? To create, that's a part of either growing or degrading. We can create a whole heap of negative things, or we can create a whole heap of positive things.
Are you talking about on Earth, the potential on this list for what we can do on Earth, or also in the spirit world?
Everywhere.
Because I was thinking of, you said that you can create creatures and whatever you want.
Yeah. Amazing, eh? Well, there's an illustration in the Robert James Lee's material again of the children learning how to create a piece of grass, remember? And I've spoken to young children in the spirit world who they're in the 4th or 5th sphere at the moment on the divine love path, and they create animals and they create living houses that they use as playgrounds that also are alive and they breathe, and they're animals, but they live in them. There's all sorts of stuff being created in the spirit world. It just gets down to your imagination and your understanding and harmony with love and so forth. So we're over it, Joy. And so if you think about all those potentials, it's just amazing what potentials there are.
One of the things I love about God, it probably comes under having a relationship with God, is that He's just the most beautiful example of a loving parent.
Yeah.
Like people say, we didn't get a rule book. Well, actually, if you just learn from God will teach you everything you ever need to know about how to treat others. And we did get
rule books, actually. If you had to write them all down, imagine it would be so difficult because, how many pages is the Bible? It's about 1,000 or 1,500 pages or something long. Most people have never read the whole thing. And I understand why, though. But imagine a rule book that talks about one law, like the law of compensation. How long would that book take? Man, it'd be you'd be 100 volumes for the law of compensation, and it's God created a far better way to learn as well, which was through the soul-based emotional experience. So actually you absorb all this information eventually, and this is why learning with your intellect is such a rudimentary, and also it's something you have to give up because it limits you severely to actual learning from God's perspective. Soul-based learning, emotional-based learning is going to be far more rapid, and you'll absorb far larger pieces of information in a short period of time, and you also retain that information through completely different mechanisms than memory.
And it seems to be only limited by my desire to know more about the subject.
It does.
Like it's unlimited, like God always over-delivers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Always. Yep. Okay, if we Janine down the front and then Barbara on this side. Just Janine down here. Hand up.
I thought it was really beautiful that the potential to receive parts of God's nature.
Yeah. At this stage, many of us have received God's love, but there's also other parts of God's nature that come with that. Like, an example of that is, if you read the book, The Gate of Heaven, in there you'll see that Aphra learns to go from travelling over time to travelling instantly. And it's explained to him that one of the aspects of God's nature is this thing of wherever you want yourself to be, you are there immediately. It doesn't matter how far away it is. So, in other words, you're unbounded by the limitation of time and space in that place. So that's a part of God's nature. God's unbounded by time and space. And we, as we grow in God's love, get to the stage where we're no longer bounded by time and space. So that means you can go and you can actually, like, you can be in your celestial home and then instantly here without there being any gap in time at all. Not even a second or a millisecond or a microsecond or a picosecond, or it's all just so instant. Prayer is like that. The instant you have a feeling for God is the instant God feels it. There's no gap in time. So prayer is actually one of the highest and most rapid, well, it's hard to say it's even a rapid form of communication, because the reality is it's instant. There's no delay in time. So God created you with the ability to transmit certain types of energy that have no delay in time, and eventually you become a being that has no delay in time. So therefore you become a person who no longer is bounded by the constraint of time, in the sense of, it doesn't mean you can go backwards in time, because that's a completely different theoretical assumption that humans have. But I'm talking about the fact that there's no time between the decision and the outcome. It happens immediately. These are all wonderful gifts, a part of God's nature that God gives to us through the process. Real powerful things. Yeah. Where are we up to, Barbara?
And an interesting law of attraction, I get the soulmate one. That's the one.
Yeah.
So God's potential gift to us, if we use our will in a desirous way, will attract our soulmate.
Well, it's not really accurate to say we'll attract our soulmate, isn't it? It's to unify with our soulmate.
Yes, that's true.
You're already attracted to your soulmate. You're just not conscious of it. Now, that's a different condition than our created condition, because our created condition, we are a complete soul, but we're not aware of our completeness or anything like that. But not only that, if we don't engage God's love, we can never become what we would classify as a unified soul. Now, the soul union state is a completely different state than actually joining with your soulmate. The unified state is when you become at one with your soulmate, like you become one being, or you are conscious now of you being one being. Now, that's different than even unifying, isn't it, in some ways, with your soulmate? It's now that you become one being. Now, it's a very interesting concept if you think about it, because it means that that one being will never be lonely. Just even that is how many of you feel lonely at times, Yeah. And the one being never be lonely. Never be lonely. Amazing potentials. Now, these potentials, as we've discussed, are dependent upon the use of our will in a loving manner. It's a great idea, though, isn't it? Great concept. To be able to use your will in a loving manner and to be able to grow beyond your normal condition. Like, it's amazing, amazing concepts.